Chapter 21. Let's have Xiaoya marry him. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. Zhang Ji dashed into the Wang's compound, coming out with a coat of blood on his body soon after. Brother Chen, I have done your tasks. Then let's go to your home, Chen replied. But there are quite some valuables in the Wang's compound, if. Zhang Ji said with some embarrassment. They are just worldly possessions, leave them be for now. It's not preferable that we leave for your home late due to them. Some unanticipated incidents might occur, Chen explained warmly, exactly like an older brother. Zhao Ji was even more moved by his words. Then, he looked at Steward Zhao. Brother Chen, Steward Zhao has perpetrated multiple perilous affairs and has been the leading think tank for the horse theft quarter. Shall we get rid of him? Chen shook his head, nudging his horse toward Steward Zhao, quietly asking him, Old Zhao, let me ask you, who in the Zhang family is your internal infiltrator? Upon hearing this, Steward Zhao's body began to shake. He knew that this fairy was interfering in the affairs between the Zhangs and the Zhaos. The Zhao family was doomed. Compared to the blood-covered Zhang Ji, this fairy was far more terrifying, with a smile on his face and calling him Old Zhao. Internal infiltrator. How? Are there traitors within my family? Zhang Ji asked in disbelief. Steward Zhao looked at him in disdain, then answered with a shiver, It's Zhang Ji's cousin, Wu Wei. Oh. How much did you promise him? Chen continued. After eliminating the Zhangs. He will have Ms. Zhang, plus half of the Zhang family's properties. Steward Zhang didn't dare hide the truth. After all, with a background as a horse thief, he wasn't the most loyal of men. No way. How? You must be kidding me. My cousin has been living a life of security, and it's my father who adopted him. How can he do that? Zhang Ji's entire body shook as if it was hit by a thunder. He wasn't in the best shape at the moment. Chen sighed as he looked at Zhang Ji. This kid was rather young and has not been adequately educated by society yet. Too young, too simple, sometimes naive, he thought. We can go to your home to see if Steward Zhao is telling the truth, Chen said. How? We will talk on our way. Also, bring Steward Zhao on the way. Soon, the two arrived at the Zhang compound. At this point, the guards at the gate were on the highest alert, as servants patrolled with full caution. Young master is back. Despite the bloody coat, the servants recognized Zhang Ji and promptly opened the door. Upon leaving the horse, Zhang Ji instructed the servants while pointing toward Steward Zhao, watch over this person well. Yes. Without speaking any words, the servants pushed Steward Zhao to the side. Afterwards, Zhang Ji walked to Chen's side, showing a gesture of please. Brother Chen, please go first. Chen smiled, and instead wiped the blood on Zhang Ji's face in such a way that his facial expressions were entirely unrecognizable. Your acting skills are rather inadequate, so it would be best if your face remains unrecognizable. When we come in, do as I have taught you. This way, we'll be able to see if your cousin's the traitor. Yes. Zhang Ji replied. Even at this point, he was still not fully willing to accept the fact that his own cousin had betrayed their family. The two entered the main building of the Zhang complex one by one. Before Chen could get a good look at the interior, a person dashed out and immediately hugged Zhang Ji without saying a word. Cousin. Are you okay? Why is your body covered in blood? Chen looks at this person. He was a young man about Chen's age. His face was full of worry, seemingly somewhat grandiose. Clearly, this was Wu Wei, Zhang Ji's cousin. System, any malicious people towards the Zhangs nearby. 2 meters in front of you. Upon hearing the system's response, Chen was satisfied. With this good start, he could test things out with much better certainty now. In a few moments, several more people ran out from the back house. The leading figure was a strong, middle-aged man with a stocky build. His face, full of roughness, showed some resemblance with Zhang Ji. This was clearly Zhang Ji's father, Zhang De. Zhang De was a military man, earning for his family with military credits. However, he was a rather blunt person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have such a silly son, nor would he disregard all calculations and wage wars on the much more powerful Zhao's family just for an attack on his son, throwing his entire family into a crisis. Chen Chen silently observed every member of the Zhang family. Zhang Ji's mother looked like a regular woman, with nothing particularly noteworthy about her. On the other hand, Zhang Ji's sister seemed to have some form of a genetic mutation that made her look rather fabulous indeed. At the age of 28, she was like a lily straight out of water, plainly gorgeous. And with her expression of concern as she looked at her brother, she only appeared more adorable. This explained Wu Wei's intentions. Even Chen Chen was somewhat moved. Chen Chen thought these things to himself, unable to help but smile. This young brother is. Zhang De was the first to notice Chen Chen. He asked this question to Zhang Ji. Zhang Ji immediately escaped Wu Wei's hands and formally introduced Chen Chen. This is my newly known brother, Chen Chen. He saved my life. His martial arts skills are no worse than mine. Now, he is even willing to help our family. His words were half true, half false. All of them were taught to him by Chen Chen. Zhang De did not look down on him due to Chen Chen's simple clothes. Rather, he cupped his fists, declaring, "Young brother, you are a benefactor of the Zhang family for saving my son. My family will be doing all that we can to help you, even if that means dashing through fire." Chen Chen frowned. Since they were father and son, their words were surprisingly similar too. It's part of my responsibility to help out when there is a need. Lord Zhang, you don't need to be so polite. I am not being polite, I am very serious. This is not the place for conversation, so please follow me inside, Zhang De said sternly, pointing towards the guest hall. Chen Chen nodded and walked straight in the direction he pointed towards. When passing Wu Wei, he can feel a clear sense of hostility. Inside the guest room, Chen Chen took the guest seat as a maid came and served him a cup of tea. Chen Chen nodded and sipped from the teacup, the motions elegant and fine. Everybody's eyes showed signs of surprise as they saw this. Chen Chen looked up, somewhat confused. What was the matter with them? However, he understood the reason the very next second. Zhang De grabbed his tea and finished it all in one shot, showing very little etiquette. The several female dependents, feeling somewhat awkward, attempted to sip their tea like Chen Chen, but couldn't quite mimic his fine grip, looking weird at first glance. The Zhang family is a family of military individuals. They probably aren't that educated. And likely don't know tea-drinking shenanigans either, Chen Chen thought to himself. Compared to him, with his modern society experience, the Zhang's so-called large household felt somewhat coarse. He was doing what he normally did. Were he to follow those fairy pretenders he had seen in his last life, at least in terms of their tea-drinking manner, he may very well frighten these people. Young brother, you have a unique charisma. May I ask where you come? But before she could even finish, Zhang Ji, sitting to the side, was finally done waiting. At this point, he only wished to confirm if his cousin was the traitor within the Zhang family. Therefore, he loudly yelled, "Father! Mother! Brother Chen is a person of great righteousness and I find myself a good match with him in conversations. How about we marry him to Xiaoya? Pfffff." Upon hearing his words, every single person who had been pretending to sip their tea couldn't help but shoot out all of it out of their mouths. Chapter 22. On the signal of a broken glass. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. Thankfully, I covered up his face. His tone sounded as if marrying his sister was a perilous order of affair. Chen felt rather helpless within but had to put on a surprised look on his face. Absolutely not. Before Chen could refuse, a loud refusal spread across the guest hall. Everybody looked towards the source of the sound, surprised by what they saw. For the speaker was Zhang Ji's cousin, Wu Wei. Chen frowned but didn't speak, sneering from within. This Wu Wei was rather inexperienced, showing off his master plan at the slightest trigger, speaking even before him. Wu Wei realized that his words weren't appropriate, adjusting them to say, I mean, marriage is an important order of affair and should be done with more consultation. You shouldn't be making decisions at the drop of a hat. While he concealed himself well, Chen can see a strain of hatred deep within his eyes. Xiaoya, what do you think? While Zhang De thought this order of affair sounded somewhat fishy, he didn't make his opinions known just yet, instead looking at his shy daughter. Zhang Xiaoya kept her head down, taking a small glimpse at Chen without sign. She remained silent for a moment, finally speaking at the volume of a mosquito, at the sole discretion of father and mother. Being a girl in this world, she'd long been indoctrinated with the idea that the critical affair of marriage should be decided by the instructions of parents and recommendations from a middleman. Given the fact that Chen, while in somewhat plain clothes, was of a unique charisma that differentiated him from her father and brothers, who were rather crude men specialized in fighting, if a marriage actually happened, she would be fine with it. What? Looking at Zhang Xiaoya's shy face, Chen was very surprised, and therefore can't help but ask the system a question. System, who's the most charismatic male within a 15-meter radius? The inhibitor. Chen unknowingly smoothed his hair as he heard the answer. Well, even disregarding clothes and power, his charisma could stand out like a firefly in the dark in the Zhang family. It was normal that an average girl wouldn't be able to withstand his lure. What about the least charismatic person within a 15-meter radius? Chen looked at the three males from the Zhang family, asking with a certain degree of satire. The man behind the wall, 3 meters behind you. Chen was briefly stunned by the response. As good as his sense was, he simply did not expect someone to be behind the wall. This may be too much of a coincidence. System, how many people are there within a 15-meter radius? 15, located in. When the system finished, Chen's face froze, his humorous thoughts out of the window. Inside the guest hall, there were 5 people from the Zhang family, plus a mid, which added to a total of 7, including himself. The other 8 people were lurking near the guest hall, not even he could see any signs of them. Even if he were to be told that this wasn't an ambush, he wouldn't believe it. Who would protect one's family in this manner? He continued to ask the system how many people from the Zhangs there were nearby. The system excluded the 8 and Wu Wei from its response. Chen sighed internally when he heard the response. Apparently the 8 were all arranged by Wu Wei. The things happening today didn't have to be as complicated as they appeared to be. He quietly mobilized his ethereality to inspect the tea he had just drank. Unsurprisingly, Chen sensed drugs within the cup. However, this was of no use to him with his ethereal entity, he could purify them away with ease with ethereality. Were it not for my presence, I think the Zhangs may very well be in peril. He wasn't too worried about Zhang Ji. That person had the finest luck possible. In other words, he was so lucky, he couldn't die even if he wanted to. Xiaoya, consider well. Look at him, he looks anything but rich. Your marriage may mean a lifetime of suffering. Wu Wei stood up and pointed at Chen, his words entirely devoid of reservation. By this point, his face was as grim as it could possibly be, his heart burning with envy. He'd been the person who served his cousin for ages, yet he got defeated by this poor lad that came from nowhere. Just due to his handsomeness and charisma. Zhang Ji was infuriated by these statements. He stood up and spoke with fury, "Cousin, Brother Chen is just not bothered by money. Otherwise, he would have been the richest person here by this point." Zhang Ji's statements were sincere. After eliminating the Wangs, Chen Chen didn't even bother confiscating their wealth, instead rushing off to help him. He knew he couldn't match such high morals. Upon hearing Wu Wei's comments on Chen Chen, his fury rose in no time. Hearing this, Wu Wei sat down, his young face somewhat distorted. "Top riches. Ha! Cousin, I'm not blaming you, but you are just too easily fooled. If he were the richest person here with ease, why would he wear these kinds of clothes? Let me tell you a simple truth. No sane person in the world tortunes oneself. If one can wear clothes of fine silk, one wouldn't wear hemp clothes. If one can eat fine dishes, one wouldn't eat fodder." Chen Chen gave a mental thumbs up at his words while sitting on the side. For as bad of a person as Wu Wei is, he did reach the heart of the issue. Why would he wear this if he had the money? Is it that silk is uncomfortable? No. Beyond expectations, Zhang Ji is only more infuriated by the words. He points at Chen Chen, the admiration in his eyes unparalleled. "Brother Chen. He is different. Do you know how hard he works?" This statement is loud and powerful, bringing a flush even to Chen Chen's face. Before he even noticed, Zhang Ji had become his fan. Seen the 1,000-meter-tall black wind cliff? Well, you won't know. Zhang Ji attempted to speak again but sat back down instead. He intended to convey the story of Chen Chen's cultivation by jumping off of the cliff, then give the story of a young eagle, but after a moment of thought, he figured that his words were too inadequate in demonstrating Chen Chen's high character and moral, so he swallowed the words. "Cousin, your statements are a bit too much. I, Zhang Xiaoya, am not the type of person to care about nothing but money." Zhang Xiaoya, who had been quiet for a long time, suddenly spoke up. For as low her voice was, the displeasure in it was public. After listening to the words, Wu Wei suddenly laughed, the sound getting louder as the seconds passed. "Ha! So you mean I, Wu Wei, am a villain?" Mr. and Mrs. Zhang both frowned upon hearing these insane words coming from Wu Wei's mouth. Zhang De turned to the maid and informed her, "Xiao Lan, bring young Master Wei to his room for some rest." The maid immediately responds to the call, but before she could act, Wu Wei knocked on the table and took a tea glass in front of him. "Uncle, I love Xiaoya. Let me ask you, are you willing to betroth Xiaoya to me?" Every single person in the room's face changed upon hearing those words. Zhang De groaned, "You rebellious son, get out of the room now." Not even Zhang De was expecting Wu Wei to threaten the Zhangs. Mrs. Zhang sitting aside, sighed and said, "Xiao Wei, we all know your thoughts, but Xiaoya has long told us that she is not in love with you." Wu Wei's face paled for a sudden, then turned ferocious in just a moment. "Not in love with me? Ha, I know you Zhangs could never be bothered with me. For in your eyes, I am just a dog in the Zhang family's care. You rebellious son. Have I ever treated you differently than Sun Ji in all these years? I have expected you to take over the family possessions after Sun Ji embarks on the cultivation journey, that it seems like I should send you to the military for some time of experience instead." Zhang De yelled. He tried to stand up, but for some reason his body had softened, forcing him to sit back down. Wu Wei sneered at his words, his hands firmly gripping the glass. "You are just being fake. Let me show you the consequences of not taking me seriously. Also, you cheap girl. Wait until you see what L will do with you." Afterwards, Wu Wei powerfully tosses the glass in front of Zhang Xiaoya. Crunch. Following that crisp sound, there was suddenly a commotion surrounding the guest hall. Chapter 23. Brainless. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. A moment later, 8 heavily built men dressed in guards' uniforms dashed into the parlor, steel knives in their hands. Apart from Chen Chen, all the people of the Zhang family had deep frowns on their faces. Even if they really were stupid, they would have realized that things were out of line by now. Zhang Ji especially, who had been mentally prepared the earliest, was certain that Wu Wei was the traitor at this point. Cousin. The Zhangs have always treated you well, I never thought you would bring yourself to commit such ungrateful, ungracious deeds. Zhang Ji was so furious, he was shaking all over. The 8 of them were servants that Wu Wei had previously gone out to recruit. From the look of things now, the majority of them must belong to the Zhao family. What do you mean by ungrateful and ungracious? This is the infallible nature of human beings, to secure their own benefits. Wu Wei sat down with a serene, composed look on his face, appearing as if he had this victory within his grasp. Zhang Ji was utterly infuriated by his words, getting the urge to dash up to Wu Wei and grab him. However, right at that moment, a sense of lethargy surged through him. He staggered, and then tumbled onto the ground. Upon seeing the scene, Wu Wei and the 8 burly men burst into laughter. Ha! Cousin, the tea that you just drank has had a paralyzing powder mixed into it. In a few hours' time, you won't be able to use any of your strength. The burly men followed along and flattered him for what he had done. Young Lord Wei has contributed massively this time. I just notified the people outside, and they have contacted Lord Zhao right away. I suppose it won't be long before Lord Zhao will come attacking with his forces. At that moment, Zhang De also realized that he was unable to use any of his strength, and he couldn't help but feel a deep sorrow. He muttered, "It never occurred to me that I have been raising a traitor who victimized the whole family. Xiaoya, Jie, it's Dad's fault." Right as he finished speaking, a commotion ensued outside the parlor. Obviously, people from the Zhang family had realized that something unusual was going on in here. Moments later, a few dozens of guards surrounded the parlor. Wu Wei put a ferocious look on his face when he saw the scene, growling, "I'm going to kill everyone in House Zhang if any one of you dare to move." The guards exchanged glances upon hearing his words. No one dared budge. Nonetheless, Zhang De seemed to have nothing left to worry about. He snarled, "All of you, come inside and slaughter this traitor for me. Otherwise, if the Zhaos come, we'll all be dead. Old man. If you dare to touch me, believe me, I will strip off Xiaoya's clothes right in front of everyone, and you won't get to rest in peace even in death." Wu Wei walked right up to Zhang Xiaoya, the look on his face hysterical by now. Zhang Xiaoya couldn't help but begin sobbing when she heard his words. Zhang De was so exasperated that green veins were bulging and throbbing on his forehead. He was at a loss for words. What a brutal man. At that moment, a tranquil voice reverberated throughout the parlor. The people traced the source of the sound to Chen Chen, who was enjoying his tea with a calm, unruffled look on his face. Upon seeing this, Zhang Ji couldn't help but remind him, "Brother Chen, the tea has been drugged." Chen Chen did not seem to be bothered at all. He took a light sip of the tea. His moves were as elegant as usual, and his aura was extraordinary. Wu Wei laughed through his anger as he watched the scene. "Brainless thing, how could you still be acting cool at this point of time?" Chen Chen was in no hurry to answer him. After taking another sip of tea, he asked him, "Wu Wei, do you really think that the Zhaos will fulfill their promise after exterminating the Zhangs? Do you really think that thieves are capable of keeping their word?" Wu Wei's face fell theatrically upon hearing his words. In an enraged voice, he refuted him, although Lord Zhao comes from a rather uncivilized background, he's still a hero who lives up to his promises. He swore a solemn oath in front of me. He's right, our chief always does as he says, those big guys added hastily, fearing that Wu Wei might change his mind. However, the panic in their eyes did not escape Chen Chen's notice. Thieves were thieves, what hero were they babbling on about? These guys really were great at sugarcoating. Perhaps he was worried now, as a cold sweat was trickling down Wu Wei's face without him realizing. Eventually, all of his fears transformed into fury towards Chen. He looked at Chen, his eyes lit with a murderous blaze. This brat is full of misleading nonsense, kill him for me. Right as he finished, an enormous, ugly-looking guy with an upturned nose strode toward Chen. Zhang De spoke up when he saw what was happening. Wu Wei, this little brother has nothing to do with the Zhangs. Why must you vent your anger on him? Let him go, and I will have the guards outside retreat, what do you think? Upon hearing this, Chen subliminally shot Zhang De a glance. Despite being rather straightforward and stubborn, Zhang Ji's father was a good man. He could be considered a real man of honor. When he went for cultivation in the days to come, he could put his mind at ease, leaving his parents under the care of a man like him. In fact, he had laid down his plans even before coming here. If he managed to save the Zhangs this time, they would certainly perceive his goodwill. As one of the 3 most reputable families of Sichuan County, he would be able to resolve the Wang's influence sooner with the help of the Zhangs. Before his departure, he could even reach a bargain with the Zhang family. In the future, he would look after the brat Zhang Ji, and in Sichuan County, the Zhangs would take care of his parents. It was all very fair and reasonable. The look on Wu Wei's face kept changing. Honestly speaking, he was very afraid of the guards outside. Even if Lord Zhao arrived with his forces, these guards could take him, the traitor, along with them to hell if they went all out in the fight. However, if these guards were removed from the picture, he would become utterly fearless and invincible. Having thought of that, he gave that unbelievably ugly guy a look, gesturing for him to stop. Uncle, have the guards retreat first. I only want to kill the Zhangs. I haven't lied to you yet, at least not at this point, Wu Wei said. Zhang De gritted his teeth upon hearing his words. It wasn't because he believed Wu Wei, but because after he calmed down, he realized that the best strategy was to have the guards retreat. Otherwise, once the Zhaos arrived later on, these guards would not be able to escape their deaths, as no one would be around to lead them. Wu Wei, if you lie to me, I will not forgive you even if I turn into a ghost. After that, Zhang De yelled outside, dismissed, all of you. Leave Sichuan County and get your own lives. From now on, you have no more ties with the Zhangs. Upon hearing that, a commotion broke out among the guards, none of them willing to leave. If you don't leave, what awaits you will be death. Do you get it? Seeing that the guards were still delaying leaving, Zhang De rebuked them with great frustration. Only then did the guards begin to move. However, before they took off, the guards knelt to the ground and made 3 kowtows to the parlor. Zhang De could not bring himself to watch anymore, turning his head to the other side. Right at that moment, the sound of horses galloping came from the distance. Wu Wei was overwhelmed with joy when he heard that sound. The Zhao's forces had finally arrived. The Zhaos were originally horse-riding thieves who possessed top-notch hunting and attacking skills. Even if the guards managed to leave House Zhang, they might not make it out alive. Having thought of that, he became relieved. After shooting a contemptuous glance at Zhang De, he pointed at Chen. Go ahead and kill this brat. Little beast, you fooled me. Zhang De was boiling with rage when he heard him. Gripping the teacup, he aimed it at Wu Wei. However, he could not exert the slightest bit of force with his hand, and the cup fell right in front of him. So what if I fooled you? A family of idiots. Wu Wei had a look of disdain on his face. He looked towards Chen once again, the look in his eyes terrifying. Beside him, the extremely ugly man raised his knife and slashed it towards Chen, who was seated on the guest seat. Ah! Icy light shimmered and Xianxia couldn't help but scream in fright. She couldn't imagine this extraordinary young man being brutally slaughtered. However, a moment later, the gush of blood did not come out as expected. The young man, who hadn't been moving all this time, was still sitting peacefully where he was. He was caressing the cup lid with one hand while looking at Wu Wei, the look on his face calm and serene. His other hand was clasping the incredibly sharp knife between two fingers. On the other hand, the ugly man couldn't withdraw the steel knife by an inch, no matter how much strength he used. All of a sudden, the parlor was filled with a deadly silence. It was so quiet that even the sound of needles falling to the ground was audible. Chapter 24. I am Xianxia's big brother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation, You. Wu Wei pointed at Chen, so shocked that he couldn't speak a word. Didn't this brat drink the drugged tea? He even drank more of it afterward, so why was he not affected even the slightest? Also, what kind of skill was that, clutching a sharp blade with your fingers? For a moment, his mind turned into a pile of mud. Chen turned to look at the big, ugly man, his brows creased into a slight frown. This thing was born way too ugly. Putting his upturned nose aside, there were a few centimeters of long hairs peeking out of his nostrils, not to mention his striking cockeyes and his hairstyle, which resembled that of a dog's kennel. Brother, were you hiding behind this wall of mine just now? Chen couldn't help but ask. How did you know? The big, ugly guy was still trying to free the knife with all his strength, replying to Chen's query subconsciously. Chen shook his head and heaved a soft sigh. Your unbridled temperament makes it impossible for me to not notice it even from across the wall. Brother, I don't mean to be mean to you, but when I first saw you, I thought my Lao He had turned into a human. Pfffff. Xianxia, who had been sobbing, couldn't help but laugh. Brat. God d*mnu. The hideous-looking guy lost his cool at that moment and swung his leg toward Chen's delicate face. Chen did not give a big reaction to that. With a forceful pinch of his two fingers, an enormous strength was unleashed, breaking the tip of the knife's blade in an instant. Shortly after, he flung his fingers as fast as a lightning bolt. An icy ray flashed past. The ugly guy's movements came to a halt. Moments later, he collapsed in front of Chen with a loud thud. Expert. As the scene unfolded, the pupils of the leader of the 8 robust guys shrank with shock, then he pounced onto Zhangde like a tiger attacking its prey. No matter what happened, the most crucial thing at this moment was to seize control of Zhangde. Haha. Chen sneered and the cup lid in his right hand flew forward all of a sudden, striking the big man's throat like a bullet. Blood spurted out and the big man was killed right at that spot. After completing the series of actions, Chen finished the last bit of tea in his cup. Then, in a cold voice, he declared, whoever moves, they die. The parlor fell into a second round of silence. The 6 remaining burly men looked at Chen as if they were staring at a demon. No one dared to doubt the truth in the young man's words because the 2 dead bodies lying on the ground in front of them were the best pieces of evidence. As for Wu Wei, he could no longer conceal the dread in his eyes. He had considered the possibility that Lord Zhao might go back on his words afterward, but he never thought that he would encounter defeat right here, at this point of time. Right when he was becoming anxious and agitated, a commotion sounded outside the gates of House Zhang. Shortly after, 30 to 40 people barged inside. Before those people even arrived in the parlor, an aggressive, sonorous sound reverberated throughout the entire compound of House Zhang. Old man Zhang, I'm going to sully all the ladies of your family right in front of you today. I'll let you know how it feels to be so miserable, you'd rather die. Upon hearing the voice, the 6 remaining big guys in the house looked outside, as if they had found their pillar of strength. However, their legs remained glued to the ground. No one dared to budge. Moments later, a man with a curly beard and a face full of stark scars stepped into the parlor. Only then did those big guys begin to cry out and rant. Chief. There's an expert here, he killed 2 of our brothers. The big dot-sized man with a curly beard was, of course, the master of the Zhao family, Zhao Biao. As he stepped into the parlor and was greeted by the two corpses, his eyes switched from radiant to dismal. He had been told that all of Zhang's people had been seized, but why were some of his own subordinates dead? What happened here? Zhao Biao grabbed Wu Wei and questioned him angrily. It was him. Wu Wei bellowed in a forlorn, strident voice, pointing at Chen Chen. He was so flabbergasted just now, he had to vent his fear immediately. Seeing that the great master was here, Chen Chen was prepared to deploy the tactics he used on the Wangs once again. However, as he looked around the Zhang's wooden parlor, he frowned. If he used pyrokinesis here, the whole house would be burnt to ashes, wouldn't it? At this point, the people from the Zhang family were still unable to move. If chaos broke out later on and the awning struck one or two of them to death, he did not wish to shoulder the responsibility. Especially Xianxia, who seemed to be tender and fragile. If she got licked by the flames, she would probably be disfigured. Who are you? Tell me your name and why you interfered with our business with the Zhangs. Right as he was being indecisive, Zhao Biao pointed his knife at him. Chen Chen gave a soft sigh and stood up. He had wanted to sit back and settle everything at once, so he could feel what it was like to just chat and relax while watching the walls burn down. However, it seemed like that was impossible now. Right as he stood, all 6 of the robust men in the parlor subconsciously recoiled. Upon seeing the scene, a gloom shrouded Zhao Biao. How on earth did this ordinary-looking young man kill those 2? Why were his people so frightened of him? Who am I? Chen Chen put on an upset look, sauntering toward Zhao Biao. Zhao Biao couldn't help but take a few steps back without realizing it, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He was expecting the young man before him to reveal a ground-shaking identity that would make him shudder. Who am I? Let me tell you today. As he spoke, Chen Chen walked to Zhang Ji's side and held him up. I am Zhang Ji's big brother. You can bully anyone, but if you ever lay a finger on my brother and his family, you are doomed. Chen Chen spoke in a righteous and unhesitant manner, his voice loud and clear. Zhang Ji, who heard his words, was so agitated that he began to quiver, looking like he was on the verge of kneeling in front of Chen Chen. With a brother like this, what more can I ask for? From now on, even if I have to die for the sake of my brother, I will not bat an eyelid. Zhang Ji swore to himself, his eyes glimmering with tears. Zhao Biao choked when he heard this. God d****. This brat took such a long time just to say this nonsense. Are you freaking kidding me? Did I need to know that you have relations with the Zhangs? Nonetheless, despite the rage within him, he noticed the dead body on the ground through the corner of his eyes. More precisely, he noticed the cup lid embedded in the throat of the dead body. This man's expertise is not to be belittled. We have to gang up to fight him. With that idea in mind, Zhao Biao took an abrupt step back, and yelled, everyone, charge at once and destroy this brat. Right as he finished, 2 sidekicks who had followed him here without knowing what was really happening dashed towards Chen Chen. They charged fast but flew back even faster. With a couple of bangs, they were sent flying right past Zhao Biao and out of the parlor, as though they were hit by a horse carriage. He's splendid. Although Zhao Biao had traveled far and wide and seen a great deal, his eyes gleamed with a streak of fear. What was the matter with the young man before him? Was he born with divine strength or had he just returned from some cultivation? Why did you stop? Chen Chen stood with his hands behind his back. Standing at the center of the parlor, he seemed to be protecting the place against the tide of enemies. The people from the Zhang family were in awe of him as they watched the scene play out. As a brutal man, despite being startled, Zhao Biao did not give up. He hadn't forgotten that he still had a few dozen men outside the parlor. It was a pity that the parlor was too small for them to fully utilize their advantage in numbers. They had to lure the brat out to the yard and besiege him there. As the thought occurred to him, his gaze swerved and he yelled out in a harsh voice, brat, this place is too small for a full-scale fight. Do you have the guts to go out and fight me on point one? Chen wished they could do that, but he pretended to be hesitant. Seeing that Chen did not immediately refuse, Zhao Biao felt secretly glad. He started instigating him soon after. Brat, what now? You don't dare to do so. If you don't want to fight me, it's still not too late to kneel and beg me for some mercy. I could spare your life. Upon hearing those words, Chen's cheeks flushed red, seeming like an impetuous young man who could not bear to take any insults. Why wouldn't I dare? But all of you have to be outside, and when I'm fighting you, your people can't offer you the slightest bit of help. Zhao Biao was delighted that Chen had been deceived, secretly calling him a moron inside his mind. Hurriedly, he assured him, I, Zhao Biao, am the local hero. How could I be someone who breaks promises? It will be on point one, just like I told you. If anyone else butts in, you may chop me to pieces. As he finished, Zhao Biao was afraid that Chen would change his mind, so he had all his men in the parlor retreat hastily, while also stepping outside himself. Right as he turned around, his face twisted with a smug, vicious smile. If oaths were real, he would have died countless times by now. This brat might be great, but he was young regardless. He was going to teach this brat a lesson and let him know how unpredictable human nature truly could be. However, he had no idea that Chen was also smiling. In fact, the brat was smiling even more gladly. Little brother, that Zhao Biao always goes back on his words. Don't trust him. Zhang De admonished him in worry. Chen waved his hand upon hearing his words. He walked outside, and right before he stepped out of the door, he turned to them and said, It's fine. Today, I'm going to let him know that oaths should not be taken so simply. Chapter 25. What have you pledged before? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. Walking out of the guest hall, Chen reached the Zhang family's compound. Being one of the top 3 families in Sichuan County, their compound was as large as 3 basketball fields. At that point, Zhao Biao was standing in the middle of the compound. Soon after Chen walked out, a group of horse thieves surrounded him. Upon seeing the scene, the edges of Chen's mouth rose, speaking to Zhao Biao, what about that? Listening to this, Zhao Biao, who wasn't far away, laughed. Can't you see what I mean? I may have had a hard time incapacitating you in the guest hall, but now that you're out, I can outnumber you with ease. Chen was not surprised at all. Instead, he looked at Wang Wei, who was next to Zhao Biao, and asked him, Wu Wei, is this the trustworthy hero you spoke about? Seems like just an average bandit to me. Sweat dripped down Wu Wei's face. Seeing Zhao Biao's technique of forfeiting promises, he grew more and more worried about the promise Zhao had made with him. Would he just get rid of me afterwards? Wu thought. Considering this, his legs softened, and he knelt in front of Zhao Biao. Lord Biao, I was being foolish before. Please forget everything about half of the Zhang's properties and Xianxia, I want them no more. I only desire to be of service to Lord Biao. Wu Wei's words came out with much sniveling and tears. Apparently, he was very frightened. Zhao Biao rubbed Wu Wei's head upon hearing his words, his face somewhat satirical. Wu Wei, you voluntarily forfeited these. I kept my promise. Yes. I forfeited these. Lord Biao is a fine specimen of a man, how will he be untrustworthy? Wu Wei kowtowed as if he was a hammer pounding garlic. At this point, he only sought to stay alive, he had no brain power left to consider anything else. Zhao Biao nodded in satisfaction, then pointed his knife at Chen, saying ferociously, I am trustworthy to the average person, but expect retaliation by all means if you kill my brothers. Brothers? Move together, let's retaliate for our dead brothers. The group of horse bandits immediately began to mobilize. In no time, dozens of people were dashing towards Chen Chen. Chen Chen laughed. Inside his body, ethereality rushed to his finger at insane speeds, all of his fingers sparkled with fire. As the dozen people were about to chop him into pieces, Chen Chen jumped up several meters into the air. Then, with a dance of his 10 fingers, 10 bursts of fire descend into the air, hitting the 10 closest from him. In no time, those 10 burned like oil-soaked torches. By the time Chen Chen landed softly, all 10 had been burned to ashes. With a breeze, the dark ash floated around the ground for some distance. By that point, the presence of these 10 people was long gone from the world. After killing the 10, Chen Chen raised one hand, his 5 fingers sparkling with fire. He then looked at the horse bandits around him, all of them stunned, and laughed. I was intending to have a melee with your leader. Now that he refuses to recognize his promise, don't blame me for burning you. The horse bandits, looking at the ash and machetes laying on the ground and the fire in Chen Chen's hands, couldn't help but shiver from fear. They looked to Zhao Biao with despair in their eyes. The smile on Zhao Biao's face had long frozen, his eyes filled with nothing but fear. He never would have dreamt of the Zhangs getting a fairy. One that even knew how to use spells. In his eyes, fairies didn't bother with these civil affairs. Consider the county magistrate, who was practicing in unknown places despite all the fights occurring between the 3 households. Why did this fairy in front of him even bother with this? As he shivered without any idea of what to do next, a running horse dashed in from the street. One of his subjugates jumped from the horse, kneeling down on one knee. Boss, major issue. The Wangs are eliminated. Per some spectators, it was done by a fairy that can burn people into ashes with just his fingertips. Should we keep a lower profile? After this, another breeze swept through, blowing black ash into this horse bandit's eyes, forcing him to rub them. That's when he realized that the mood of the scene seemed rather weird. After looking at the young man with the calm face surrounded by horse bandits and black ash, his pupils shrunk abruptly as he took in the full situation. Oh my God, we are done. Suddenly, a thought flashes through his mind. With a quick idea, this horse bandit stood up immediately, got onto the horse, and made a standard fist and palm salute. He said, "Sorry, you aren't my boss, I recognize the wrong person. Excuse me." Immediately afterwards, he spanks the horse's ass, leaving Zhang compound at several times the speed he came in, as if a tiger was following behind him. This man came quickly and left just as fast, leaving many of the horse bandits confused. By the time they realized what had happened, further attempts to fight were already out of the question. As they tossed their machetes away and dashed away, the compound soon descended into chaos. Chen Chen dashed forward and caught Zhao Biao's shoulder. Dragging him, he flipped Zhao Biao onto the ground. "Zhao Biao, where are you going?" "Lord Fairy, mercy. I give all my wealth and treasure to you." Zhao Biao kowtows as if he's a hammer pounding garlic, exactly like Wu Wei did earlier. "What have you sworn?" Chen Chen asks from atop. Thinking of his oath, Zhao Biao gave himself a hard slap, crying, "Lord Fairy, please don't take that seriously, I was only making a joke." "Lord Fairy, please don't take it seriously. Aren't you a hero of the area? Aren't you retaliating for your brothers?" "What hero? I am a piece of feces. Neither are those my brothers, I don't even know them." Zhao Biao had forfeited all etiquette for his life. He slapped his face as he talked, and his face swelled up before he knew it. Some weirdness was present in Chen Chen's eyes. He spoke in a solemn tone, "I heard that true heroes don't care about minor issues and can tolerate shame for revenge. Zhao Biao, I think you are the real hero." Zhao Biao's eyes immediately filled up with fear. Before he could hear anything, a ray of flame grew bigger and bigger in his eye. The next thing he knew, he was on fire. After killing Zhao Biao, Chen Chen looked at Wu Wei, who had collapsed on the side, the areas below him already wet. Wu Wei, I heard you were going to be of full service to Lord Biao. Is that true? Wu Wei, looking at Zhao Biao, surrounded by flames, shook his head as if he was a chaff sift. He hugged Chen Chen's thigh and cried, "Fairy, I was being forced into it. All of this was forced onto me by Zhao Biao. I didn't want to betray my uncle. Uncle's family has given me so much mercy, how can I do anything bad to them? Especially my cousin. He gives me the finest of attention, and I feel there's not enough time in the day to appreciate him. Fairy, if you are my cousin's brother, you are my brother. Brother, don't kill me." Chapter 26. Do you know that beauty is a danger? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. Chen Chen did not say a word at the sight before him. Instead, he sent Wu Wei flying with a light kick, sending him straight into the parlor. The people from the Zhang family had clearly seen what had happened outside, still dumbfounded at the moment. They only came back to their senses when Wu Wei came flying in and collapsed right before their eyes. Uncle. I really was being forced by them. You have to believe me. Wu Wei fell hard, but his strong survival instincts made him quickly scramble to his feet and hold on to Zhang De's legs. Zhang De scowled as he saw this, but he did not speak. So, Wu Wei had no choice but to embrace Zhang Ji's legs instead. Cousin, do you remember how we used to play together when we were kids? Please forgive me this time. When the next recruitment begins, I will go and join the army and be a good man. Although Zhang Ji wasn't a smart person, he had a clear sense of what was right and what wasn't. When he finished listening to Wu Wei, his eyes were filled not with sympathy, but disgust. Moments later, Chen Chen stepped into the parlor, with a person held in his hands. It was the steward of the Zhaos, who had previously been captured. Old Zhao, did you people force Wu Wei to betray the Zhangs? Chen Chen asked casually, finding a spot to seat himself. Steward Zhao was scared witless by then. Shaking his head, he replied, "No, definitely no. Our chief didn't believe this brat from the start, it was the brat who revealed young Lord Zhang's whereabouts first. We sent our people to check it out, and they really happened to run into young Lord Zhang, who was all by himself. Only after that did our chief believe him." Upon hearing this, Wu Wei was frightened out of his wits. He never expected Steward Zhao, who had directly arranged the matters with him, to be caught and brought to House Zhang. You're slinging mud at me. Steward Zhao did not bother with Wu Wei's accusation, continuing, "This morning, he informed us again that young Lord Zhao would head for a nearby village to ask for help. And asked us to stop him on his way and kill him. He even asked us for drugs." Zhang Ji could no longer stand what he heard. He closed his eyes, misery written all over his face. One could imagine just how it would feel to be betrayed by a close relative. "Do you need me to do it for you?" Chen Chen asked. "No need," Zhang Ji stated firmly. He opened his eyes abruptly, filled with firm resolution. While holding him up just now, Chen Chen had resolved most of the drugs in his body with his ethereality, so he was almost fully recovered at this point. Looking at Wu Wei, Zhang Ji unsheathed his own sword. "Cousin, I beg your mercy." Chen Chen absented himself from the familial affairs of the Zhangs and carried Steward Zhao outside. As he went, he demanded, "Give me a reason not to kill you." "Immortal. I know where Zhao Biao's little treasury is. I can bring you there." Steward Zhao replied in a trembling voice. He had come up with this life-saving pretext while he was imprisoned by the Zhangs, so he spoke with great eloquence. "Aside from bullion and money, there are also some fabulous treasures in Zhao Biao's little treasury, which we robbed from a wealthy family of the state when we held them hostages. For that, we even lost about 100 of our men. Later, Zhao Biao came and hid at Sichuan County, presenting several items from those treasures to the county magistrate. That was how he managed to get away with it. As he listened to the story, Chen Chen put on an interested look. However, he was in no hurry. If he were to raid the treasury, he had to bring along the man of luck, Zhang Ji. With him around, surprises emerged from everywhere, even if there weren't any in the first place. An hour later, the Zhang's affairs finally came to an end. Wu Wei was killed with a strike of sword and all the guards were summoned back. After this encounter, their guards became even more loyal than before. Zhang De was extremely grateful toward Chen Chen. At first, he did not take it to heart when Zhang Ji mentioned marrying Xianxia to Chen Chen, but he was serious about it now. This was an immortal that they were talking about, after all. If his daughter could marry him and benefit from his ethereality, it would seem like a good idea. As the thought occurred to him, he became a little embarrassed and said, my daughter Xiaoya has reached a suitable age for marriage. Before he could even finish his words, a loud shout reverberated through the parlor out of nowhere. Absolutely not. It was the same words as before, but this time around, Zhang Ji was the one who had spoken them. He had a solemn look on his face, appearing extremely serious. Zhang De was rather unhappy about it. It was him who had brought up marrying his younger sister to Chen Chen, but it was also him who said no to it now. What did he really want? Was he fooling around? With Zhang De's stare pinned on him, Zhang Ji stood up, his eyes filled with reverence and admiration as he looked at Chen Chen. At first, I really wanted to marry my sister to brother Chen, but I've changed my mind now. It is pointless to say how incredible brother Chen's personality is, and more importantly, how extraordinarily talented he is. In the future, I am sure he will live for a very long time in this world. In comparison, my sister is only an ordinary woman. How could a short-living mortal stay by brother Chen's side forever? Therefore, after pondering on it for a long time, I think it will be a grievance to brother Chen if we let my sister marry him. For a man like brother Chen, I won't be surprised if he marries a fairy from the heavens. Chen Chen's eyes couldn't help but twitch as Zhang Ji waxed poetry about him. If it was someone else who was flattering him, he would not take it seriously, as he knew it was just pretense. However, Zhang Ji was speaking from the bottom of his heart, which made him rather different. Looking at Zhang Xiaoya, who seemed disappointed and aggrieved, Chen Chen thought of Arya, from the neighbor's house. Chen Chen thought that it wouldn't be a grievance if he married Zhang Xiaoya. At least, his parents would certainly be pleased. In fact, before he could finish his sentence, Zhang Ji cut him off again. Brother Chen, you don't have to bother about my sister's feelings. It is better for her to recognize this reality sooner rather than later. Brother, you are such a pain in the neck. Zhang Xiaoya, who had been sitting quietly, could not stand it anymore. She stomped her feet angrily and ran outside, vanishing into the bedroom beside the parlor. Jie, how could you speak of your own sister that way? How dare you? Lady Zhang grumbled, her eyes glistening with tears as she saw her daughter running away. As Chen Chen looked at the beautiful figure running out, he felt rather sorry. Thus, he muttered in a barely audible voice, Brother, it is all right for me to take some grievances. It's not a big deal. Upon hearing this, Zhang Ji heaved a soft sigh, and said with an upset look on his face, Brother Chen, you haven't realized how outstanding you are yet. Every marriage has to be compatible. It is not an empty saying. In fact, it is very reasonable. Chen Chen was speechless when he heard that. This Zhang Ji seemed overly bewitched by him, turning into a die-hard fan of his. However, Zhang Ji did not notice the shift in his mentality. Looking at the bedroom where his sister had escaped, he went on, Brother Chen, have you ever heard that beauty is a danger? Chen Chen nodded subconsciously but did not understand why that had anything to do with him. Could Zhang Ji be fearing that his sister would bring him harm? It wasn't that serious, was it? Unexpectedly, Zhang Ji turned around and patted him hard on his shoulder. With a somber look, he said, Brother Chen, with your talents, once you step into the world of cultivation, countless extraordinary young girls will be awaiting you there, all of them falling for you. There might be some devils and demons with malicious intentions among them as well. Would they allow an ordinary woman like my sister to own you, Brother Chen? Once they begin to have evil thoughts, my sister's life will be on the line. Thus, Brother Chen, I beg for your understanding. Chen rubbed his ear, thinking he must have misheard something. So Zhang Ji was actually talking about him when he called beauty a danger. That was an overstatement, wasn't it? However, Zhang Ji wasn't looking at him, but at the sky in the distance. He mumbled under his breath, I already have the feeling that there is about to be a major calamity in the world of cultivation. Upon hearing that, Chen's breath caught in his throat, and he nearly passed out. Chapter 27. The European Emperor and the African Chief. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation, ahem, then I won't marry your sister. Chen was feeling resigned. However, their top priority wasn't to discuss this matter, but to deal with the affairs of the Zhao family and the Wang family. The two of them discussed these matters for a while, then completed the negotiations. Of course, all of the various properties of the Wang family would undoubtedly be handed over to Chen. As for the Zhao family's properties, each man would take half of them. However, the Zhang family needed to solve all the troublesome handover issues for Chen, along with dealing with all kinds of inquiries from the county government. Half a day later, everything was settled. Chen and Zhang Ji were led by Steward Zhao to the Zhao family compound. The Zhao family compound was much bigger than the Wang and Zhang family compounds. However, since Zhao Biao was a horse thief with no family, the compound looked very empty. There had been a few adopted sons earlier, but now they were mostly dead. Several of Zhao Biao's concubines, who were bought from a brothel, had run away after hearing something had happened to Zhao Biao. Zhao's house was quite a mess now. Don't worry. Zhao Biao's little treasure box must be locked down tight. Those girls could never have opened it. Steward Zhao led the two to Zhao Biao's bedroom while he explained the situation, fully demonstrating his worth. In a few moments, the men were inside Zhao Biao's bedroom. Zhao Biao's bedroom was large, but the precious things in it were long gone, leaving only a bed big enough to accommodate 3 or 4 people. When Steward Zhao saw this, he got onto the bed, threw away the blanket, and began to tap on the bed. Dang! 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 The heavy sound revealed that the bottom was solid. Seeing this, Chen was surprised. Did Steward Zhao not know where the treasure box was? It's not under the bed. Then why did Thief Zhao get such a big bed? Steward Zhao panicked, then jumped out of bed and knocked on all of the walls, still finding nothing. Zhang Ji looked at the bed more and more suspiciously. He wanted to climb onto the bed and try it himself, but Chen stopped him. It won't be under the bed. Otherwise, when he was playing the Symphony of Love, there would be noises from under the bed, and any idiot would know that it was hollow underneath. Zhao Biao's concubines were not a faithful group, something Zhao knew too, so he wouldn't have let them know where his treasure box was. What Symphony of Love? Zhang Ji looked confused. He didn't understand what Chen was saying. Just then, Steward Zhao plopped down and kneeled in front of Chen. Immortal, I really did see it with my own eyes. Zhao Biao took treasures out of his bedroom. Chen ignored him and asked the system in his mind, is there any secret room or treasure chest within 15 meters? 40 centimeters under the feet of the person in front of the host, the system responded quickly. The person in front of Chen was naturally Zhang Ji, who was frowning at this time, as if he was still wondering what a symphony of love was. Chen looked at him in sympathy. Dear bro, please move your feet. Zhang Ji was still confused, but he made way. Chen walked to where he previously was and stomped heavily on the floor. Dang! 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 It still seemed to be a solid sound, but after careful observation, one could tell that there was a slight difference. If he didn't know that there was a treasure trove below, it would be difficult to discern this small difference. However, since he already knew in advance, he was aware of the change. Without hesitation, Xianxia bent down and smashed the two adjacent floor tiles into powder. Then he stepped back half a meter, grabbed the middle floor tile with both hands, and used a lot of force. Clang! Along with the sound of colliding stones, a 40 cm thick floor tile was lifted by Xianxia, revealing the dark tunnel hidden below. With the weight of this stone brick alone, most people wouldn't be able to lift it, so they won't know of any mechanism here. Even if there was no mechanism, this stone brick would be enough to stop many people. How many treasures are under here, making Xiao Biao so cautious? Xianxia put the stone brick aside, with some expectation in his heart, but he was not in a hurry to go down. He looked at Steward Zhao. Steward Zhao was sweating profusely at this time. Of course, he understood what Xianxia wanted. He quickly crawled inside the opening and led the way. When Zhang Ji saw this, he said with some embarrassment, "Brother Chen, you discovered this treasure trove. The contents inside belong to you. I won't go down there. Instead, I will stay outside to keep watch." "Hey, you are my brother, you have a share. How can a mere treasure match our brotherly bond?" Xianxia waved his hand and said righteously. Was he kidding? He resisted using the system to find out what was the most valuable thing inside because he wanted Zhang Ji, the lucky charm, to check it out first. How could Zhang Ji not go in? Zhang Ji was touched once he heard those words. He didn't refuse, going straight into the tunnel before Xianxia. He swore to himself that if there was any danger within that Steward Zhao couldn't prevent, then he would stop it. The three of them went into the tunnel, which led to a secret room. There were no hidden traps inside, only 8 large boxes. Presented with the kind of scene that could only be seen on TV in his previous life, Xianxia couldn't help but walk toward one box. He opened it with a face filled with expectations. Yet, instead of jewels and riches, all Xianxia saw was a pile of junk. Rusty knives, tattered clothing, women's camisoles, whips, shackles, and other messy things. It seemed that they were all Xiao Biao's mementos. If they were sold, they would be worth a few taels of silver. Bad luck. Xianxia cursed to himself. He picked the middle box, but how come this was all he got? He smiled sheepishly and looked at Zhang Ji. "Brother, you can open the rest of the boxes." Zhang Ji didn't think too much when he heard those words. He unconditionally followed his elder brother's order. After walking to the first box, he opened it abruptly and without any skill. A second later, countless rays of light shot out from the inside, the glare making Steward Zhao walk back a few steps. D*MN, a box of gems and pearls. It's worth tens of thousands of taels. Why is the difference between people so big? After Xianxia saw the contents clearly, he had to cuss in his mind. Zhang Ji's eyes flashed in shock too when he saw the box of treasures. He knew that the Zhao family was rich, but he didn't think they were this rich. Just this box of gems and pearls was twice the fortune of the Zhang family. "Brother Chen, we're rich." Even Zhang Ji, who was from a prominent family, was excited at this moment. "Don't get emotional, open more boxes." Xianxia voluntarily moved away from those boxes, afraid that the anger inside of him might affect Zhang Ji's performance. Zhang Ji continued to open the boxes. The second box, full of gold, was worth tens of thousands of taels. The third box, full of silver, was worth 7,000 or 8,000 taels. The fourth box was full of magical weapons. Who knew where Xiao Biao snatched them? Their value was unknown. The fifth box contained rare things like corals, the value of which was also unknown. The sixth box held a bunch of real estate titles, servant deeds, and the like, all with unknown value. There wasn't much stuff in the seventh box, with only a few ordinary looking stones, a gray colored bead, and a small token. Chen didn't know what the beads and tokens were, but as a cultivator, he felt a strong aura coming from those stones. The last box doesn't seem to be worth much, Zhang Ji said, looking at the stones with dissatisfaction. Chen's eyes twitched when he heard that, and he couldn't speak for a while. As for whether this last box was really as worthless as Zhang Ji thought, he would find out when he asked the system. Chapter 28. Spiritual Inner Elixir and Middle Grade Spirit Stone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation System. What is the most valuable thing within 15 meters? Chen asked in his mind. The spiritual elixir in the box in front of you. It contains most of the power of a 200-year-old spirit. Hearing this answer, Chen naturally looked at the gray bead in the last box. Just as he thought, although the things in this box looked ordinary, they were very valuable. Far more valuable than those treasures. The second most valuable. The medium-grade spirit stone in the box in front of you. Third most valuable. The special soft armor in the box 2 meters to the left. Chen asked about each item, but the system did not mention the small token, so he took the token out of the box and looked at it carefully. The token had an animal-shaped mark, with no description in words. Chen guessed that it could be a token and was important symbolically. Steward Zhao, did you rob these things from the same person? Did you rob an immortal? Chen pointed to the last box and looked at Steward Zhao. Whether it was the spiritual inner elixir or the spirit stone, these were not things ordinary people could have owned. But if Xiao Biao was able to rob an immortal, why did he die so pathetically? Steward Zhao smiled with embarrassment when he heard the question. The young man we robbed was not an immortal, but he was extremely skilled in martial arts. At the time, we had more than 100 men and horses. Under our siege, he only died after slaying nearly 100 of us. Later, Xiao Biao felt that he might have provoked someone who shouldn't be provoked, so he hid in Sichuan County. Chen frowned upon hearing this. The person was not an immortal but still had all these things. In all likelihood, he was an immortal disciple like Zhang Ji. Only, his family background was many times better than Zhang Ji's. It was very likely that there were immortals among his elders, and that was how he was able to carry such precious things with him. At that thought, Chen tucked away the token into his clothes, also taking the spirit stone and the inner elixir. Then, he looked at Zhang Ji, saying, "Brother, the items in this last box are the items needed for immortal cultivation. Please allow me to take them. As for the items in the other boxes, you can take whatever you want. When you officially start the path of cultivation in the future, I will find a way to compensate you." Hearing these words, Zhang Ji waved his hand away and said with a serious face, "Brother Chen, no need to talk about compensation. If it weren't for you, the Zhang family would have been annihilated. Everything here is yours." The two talked politely some more. They finally decided not to touch the surprise treasures, leaving them in this secret room to use later, if needed. The Zhao house would now belong to Chen. With this big house, Chen wouldn't allow his parents to live in the earthen house in Stone Village anymore. Of course, the furniture would have to be replaced, or it would be unlucky. After their discussion, the two men left the secret room. As for Steward Zhao, he was not a good person, and he knew the location of the secret room too, so Chen did not let him live. However, since he did help them, Chen permitted him to have a whole corpse. Now that this is done, I have to go home. In 2 days, I will bring my parents to live here in the county, Chen told Zhang Ji before parting. Zhang Ji patted his chest and promised, "Brother Chen, don't worry. By the time you come back, I will have cleaned up this mansion for you, and have enough maids and such available for your use." "Sorry to trouble you," Chen thanked him with cupped hands. He didn't need to do many things with a younger brother around, which made him feel very relaxed. He just didn't know what to expect when returning to the village, such as how his parents and villagers would react when they found out that the Wang family had been destroyed, or all their assets were now his. They'd probably all want to marry off their daughters to me. Chen thought to himself, showing a smile on his lips. On the way back to the village, Chen thought some more, then took out the token and burned it. This thing could possibly identify its owner. If he encountered an acquaintance of the real owner in the future, it would be hard to explain. Instead of more misunderstandings occurring later on, it was better to burn it now. After burning the token, Chen took out the spiritual inner elixir and stuffed it into his mouth, before quickly spitting it out. System, what can I eat within a 15-meter radius? The horse under you, the weeds on the roadside, the leaves 8 meters away, the mushrooms under the rocks 11 meters away. The system mentioned many things but not the inner elixir in his hand. Chen wiped cold sweat from his forehead. Fortunately, he was smart and had asked the system first, otherwise he would have been in trouble. Is there anything nearby that will kill me if I eat it? The inner elixir in the hand of the host. This time the system did not hesitate, immediately mentioning the inner elixir. Is there something nearby that can eat this inner elixir? Chen did not believe the answer he was given, phrasing his question differently this time. If things went on like this, he thought, sooner or later, I will become a master of language, maybe even a philosopher. The host's horse could eat it. Chen was speechless. So this inner elixir cannot be eaten by humans. Only by animals. Maybe it's better to let my Lao He eat it. Maybe it can make Lao He powerful. Chen thought, beginning to speed up his pace. He had already searched this route when he came, so he didn't search again on his way back. Before he knew it, the familiar stone tablet in Stone Village was within his sight. By now, the bodies at the entrance of the village had been cleaned up. Additionally, 3 people were standing there. The old village chief and his parents. Looking at his deeply worried parents, Chen felt a bit of sorrow in his heart. Although his soul did not belong to this world, his body did, and it was created by his mom after many months. Therefore, in his heart, Chen Shan and Qin Ro were his parents. And if he wanted to go to the Tianyun clan, he must leave his hometown and be far away from his parents. Although he was reluctant to go, he must go there to cultivate immortality. He was born into this world of immortality. If he didn't cultivate immortality and go out to see the world before him, how could he be worthy of his ability to time travel? How could he be worthy of the incredible system? What's more, his parents were so overworked year-round that, although they were not yet in their 40s, they already had gray hair. How long would they stay alive in this world if they lived naturally? If he cultivated immortality, he might have the opportunity to take his parents on the immortal path in the future, allowing them to live forever. I have to cultivate immortality, but before leaving, I must take care of my parents. Chen made up his mind. He lightly patted the horses behind, speeding towards the stone tablet. In moments, Chen Shan and his wife, both at the entrance of Stone Village, saw their son. The wrinkles on their faces faded slightly, suddenly going from extremely worried to very relaxed. Chapter 29. Want to just idle around and kill time? No way. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. Chen dismounted the horse magnanimously and walked up to his parents. Smiling, he said, Dad, Mom, I have destroyed the Wang family. The matter of Wang Hu claiming military merits that aren't his has also been solved by the county magistrate. From now on, we, the Chens, will take charge of the Wang's properties and farmlands. What? Before Chen Shan and Qin Ro could say anything, the old village chief exclaimed in surprise. Nothing much, it's only about 50 hectares of farmlands and a dozen shops. It's not a big deal, is it? It's not really worth mentioning, Chen smiled placidly, looking casual and composed. He was an expert at posing. After all, he had seen lots of rich men posing in his previous life, phrases like small goals, quite a big deal, face.blind, ordinary people, regret.founding, note. Terms often spoken by successful Chinese businessmen, and so on at the tips of his fingertips after having been exposed to them for so long. No big deal. The village chief nearly threw up blood upon hearing this. The total area of land farmed by more than 20 families in Stone Village only added up to about 15 hectares. Moreover, in the past years, those 15 hectares of farmland would suffice for the entire village, even after the deduction of farm rent. But now, Chen had gotten a hold of a dozen shops and around 50 hectares of good lands at once, and it was no big deal. Chen smiled without saying a word. Having seen the immense wealth inside the secret chamber, the Wang's assets were indeed no big deal. In fact, apart from the Wang's assets, he had also seized half of the Zhao's assets. The Zhaos were tremendously powerful in their finances. Even that mere half of their assets were more abundant than the 50 hectares and the dozen shops that the Wangs owned. Chen, you didn't get injured, did you? Qin Ro wasn't bothered by the assets that Chen had mentioned. Instead, she looked her son up and down with a thorough glance, only beginning to smile when she saw that her son was perfectly unscathed. What could happen to me? I'm an immortal now. As he spoke, Chen stuck out his palm and a flame leaped out from his palm, which frightened the village chief so much that he nearly knelt down. I never thought an immortal would ever come from our stone village. Please bless us, ancestors. Let's call it Immortal Village from now. The village chief mumbled under his breath in a dumbfounded manner, but the looks in Chen Shan and Qin Ro's eyes turned complicated as they looked at Chen. Ha! Why are you looking at me like that? I'm still your son despite being an immortal, do you think I'll fight back if you hit me? Chen withdrew the flame and grinned. Chen, are you leaving soon? I've never heard of any immortals who have stayed in a small village, Qin Ro asked in a soft voice, her eyes filled with sadness and reluctance. Chen Shan, on the other hand, was wearing a serious look, pondering something. Chen's expression turned solemn when he saw the looks on their faces. He had to tell his parents about his plans on going for cultivation sooner or later, so he might as well be honest with them now. Yes, I have to arrive at the G State City by the 1st of August. Counting down the days, I'll have to set off about 6 or 7 days from now. The G State City was the capital of the state. Chen had no idea where it was, but according to Zhang Ji, it would take at least 10 days to travel from Sichuan County to the G State City, even by horse carriage. Hence, he had to begin the journey around the 20th of August. Upon hearing this, Qin Ro seemed to have something to say, but she bit her tongue. Beside her, Chen Shan heaved a deep sigh. It's good to go out there and see the world. I went out to serve the military for a few years too, didn't I? The outside world really isn't something that Sichuan County can compare to. The people out there are way smarter than people in small counties. Chen, while you're outside, always remember, never let your guard down for anyone. Chen nodded at that. However, he felt absolutely confident inside. Could the people out there be so brilliant that they could rival a time-traveler like him, who had been edified by modern civilization? Ha! It was the people out there who shouldn't let their guards down. Otherwise, they would suffer the cruelty of society. Alright, Dad, Mom. I'm not leaving right now, am I? Don't be in a hurry to feel sad right now. The most important thing at the moment is to pack our things, so we can move to the county town. As he spoke, Chen did not bother with his parents' response, holding their hands and running back home. Upon returning home, he was greeted by the broken windows of the earth house. Chen did not find it shabby. Rather, he felt warm and welcomed. His parents were packing things inside the house when Chen came to the pig pen secretively. Oink. Oink. Lao He had become more and more like a dog somehow. Upon sensing Chen Chen's movements, he rolled to his side and stood up in the pen. Not only was he squealing, he was also wagging his little curly tail. Chen Chen walked up to the pen and patted Lao He on the head. As usual, Lao He responded with a satisfied look. Seeing this, Chen Chen teased him, "Lao He, we will be moving houses soon. To celebrate this major event, we have invited all the villagers to a meal. How about contributing your fat flesh?" Oink. Oink. Lao He squealed a couple of times and trod to the innermost part of the pen. As he walked, he turned around to cast a glance at Chen Chen, looking like a warrior that had been forced to join the front line. His somberness couldn't be overstated. Finally, Lao He trod to the corner of the pen, and slowly lay down on his stomach after releasing a long sigh. He blinked a few times, looking extremely pathetic. "Enough, I was just fooling you," Chen Chen couldn't help but laugh. Lying there, Lao He seemed to have understood Chen Chen's words. He sprang up at once, hurrying over to Chen Chen obediently. Seeing this, Chen Chen questioned in his mind, "Is there any living thing in the nearest 15 meters that can eat that inner elixir?" "Yes, there is. It is the slightly mutated pig in front of you, host." Upon hearing the system's response, Chen Chen took out the inner elixir and placed it in front of Lao He. Lao He was a loyal pig. Even if he became humanized, he wouldn't harm his family, would he? As the thought occurred to him, he looked towards Lao He very solemnly. "Lao He, I'm giving you a chance. After eating this inner elixir, you will be endowed with a whole different life. Perhaps you will lose this carefree life that you've been living. You might start experiencing lots of sorrow and worries. Nonetheless, from now on, you will possess power that far surpasses that of ordinary pigs." Oink. Before Chen Chen could finish his words, Lao He shrank back into the corner. His eyes were filled with inexplicable shock and horror, even more intense than before. As he stared at the inner elixir, it seemed as though he was looking at a poison that would kill him at the first sip. Upon seeing this, Chen Chen's face turned extremely gloomy. He forgot how much Lao He relished and longed for a life of just idling around and killing time. If he had known it earlier, he would have made Lao He drink it straight away. What were all those explanations for? "Lao He, remember you're a pig with dreams," Chen Chen uttered angrily, hopping into the pig pen. However, Lao He ignored him completely, turning his head to the corner of the wall, his buttocks facing Chen Chen. "Lao He, I was lying to you. What I have in my hand is some delicious pig food that I brought from the county town just for you." Lao He still didn't respond. "It's really tasty." Lao He wagged his tail, communicating his refusal. Chen Chen was speechless. This pig was smarter than Zhang Ji. In the midst of his desperation, an idea hit him. He had no choice but to shout out, "Lao He, the sow next door has escaped her pen." Upon hearing this, Lao He turned his head around subconsciously. Seizing the opportunity, Chen Chen moved nimbly and stuffed the inner elixir into Lao He's mouth. Lao He's eyes were filled with despair. They showed an endless longing for an idle, carefree life without purpose. Before he could spit it out, Chen Chen lifted his chin. Lao He's throat rolled for a while, gulping down the elixir naturally. Chen Chen loosened his grip when he saw that all of it was consumed. Lao He stood there in a crestfallen state, as if he had lost his most valuable possession. Chen Chen sneered upon seeing the look on his face. "I have to work hard for cultivation, while you're thinking of wasting your life, killing time like that. No way." Chapter 30. Bamboozled into limping. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Translator. Dragon Boat Translation Editor. Dragon Boat Translation. The pigpen became silent after a moment. Chen Chen sat outside it, watching Lao He with a look of confusion on his face. Lao He stood there, not daring to move. It was looking around with wide eyes, as if something terrible would happen. Yet, the changes he was imagining did not appear. Man and pig watched each other like this for a while, until they could no longer stand it. Lao He moved slightly but found everything as usual. Suddenly, it became happy, rolling in the pig pen, kicking all fours, and getting up off of the ground. Dovi ko boom. As a roar sounded, the pig pen collapsed right under Chen Chen's shocked gaze. Lao He, who had jumped up unexpectedly, flew 7 or 8 meters into the air. What the? Chen Chen cried and backed up 2 steps. Plop. With a muffled sound, Lao He fell to the ground. It was stunned, its face showing utter confusion. Maybe the inner elixir has continuous power. Chen Chen thought to himself as he looked at Lao He, who was sitting on the ground. After all, the power of a creature with 200 years of cultivation wasn't very easily absorbed. It would be normal for the process to take 8 or 10 years. But if right after taking it, Lao He could already jump so high, then maybe it could touch the heavens in the future. As he imagined the scene, Chen Chen smiled. He walked to Lao He and patted its head comfortingly. Lao He, take care of yourself. After patting Lao He, Chen Chen ignored it, humming a little song as he went inside the house, leaving Lao He staring at his shabby den. Several days later, Chen Chen moved his family into the brand-new Zhao Mansion. Of course, at this time, the Zhao Mansion has been renamed the Chen Mansion. Although this house was much smaller than the county magistrate's mansion, it had no problem housing 50 or 60 people. It would be pointless for a family of 3 to live in such a large place, so Chen Chen paid high wages to young people from Stone Village, who would be caretakers in this home. At the same time, quite a few women were hired to do sewing work. Together with the maids provided by the Zhang family, the place suddenly looked full. Of course, in addition to human living quarters, Lao He was also given a large pig pen, which was as big as Chen Chen's previous home. However, Lao He wasn't happy. In the past few days, he was either eating or sleeping, as if he was afraid that he'd forget his original intention of being a pig. Chen Chen didn't bother Lao He. He didn't expect the inner elixir to transform Lao He into a diligent cultivator anyway. If Lao He could occasionally guard his home, that would be good enough. After setting up his family, Chen Chen went to the market to buy some expensive outfits. After putting on the clothing, his overall style jumped from 85 to 99 points. Looking at the handsome young man in white reflected back to him from the big, bronze mirror at the tailor, Chen Chen couldn't help but ask in his mind, system, within 15 meters of this area, who has the most style? It's you, the host. Well said. Switching back to reality, he ordered, shopkeeper, wrap up all the silk and satin in your shop and send it to the Chen house. Chen Chen waved his hand and told the shop owner. The shopkeeper was shocked, asking tentatively, the Chen house. The newly arrived Chen family. Yes. Sir, you are. I am Chen Chen, he answered honestly. The shopkeeper immediately ran out from behind the counter when he heard those words. Smiling, he said, Master Chen, don't kid me, you are the owner of our shop. If you need anything, just let us know. We will bring it over, there's no need to trouble yourself. Chen Chen frowned upon hearing this. Ha! My family owns this shop. Indeed. The 14 shops on this block are all yours as well, the shopkeeper said with envy. All smiles, Chen Chen stated, in that case, bring 1/3 of the stock to the Chen family. Yes, right away, the shopkeeper answered. Chen Chen left the shop with satisfaction after hearing this. Next, he walked around on that street for a while, his smile becoming brighter. The entertainment venues, especially, brought him joy. When he first came here in the middle of the night, it was to pick up money. It was as if he was stealing things, he was afraid to be seen. Who knew he would be the owner of all of these shops one day? After some more time spent marveling, Xianxia walked back home with a lot of packages. Before he arrived home, he saw a carriage parked at the door, the decoration indicating it was a Zhang family carriage. Xianxia understood. Since he had moved into his new home, Zhang Ji had come to offer his congratulations. It was typical. As for the carriage, it was probably carrying gifts. This Zhang Ji, while a little stupid, had decent character. He respected him very much, maybe even to a fanatical level. Maybe I shouldn't bamboozle him so much in the future, Xianxia pondered, feeling a little embarrassed. After sighing, he walked towards the house. As soon as he walked through the entrance, a young man dressed in sackcloth and leaning on crutches greeted him. "Brother Chen, I'm here to congratulate you on your move." Hearing this familiar tone, Xianxia rubbed his eyes and said in disbelief, "Dear brother." To be honest, if it weren't for Zhang Ji's voice, he wouldn't be able to tell who the young man in front of him was. Just a few days ago, Zhang Ji was a stylish young man with at least 85 or 90 points, but now he had a limp, most of his hair was chopped off, and there were a few scars on his face. Adding in the sackcloth, he looked like a refugee. Seeing Xianxia dressed all in white, Zhang Ji explained in embarrassment, "Earlier, when I saw Brother Chen dressed in a sackcloth, I thought that Brother Chen must wear such clothes to temper your will, so I asked someone to make a set for me." Xianxia was speechless for a long time before asking, "Then what's the matter with your leg? And the wound on your face? Who beat you? Tell Big Brother. Big Brother will avenge you." Zhang Ji was even more ashamed when he heard this, his face flushing red. "Brother Chen, I was greatly inspired by your story about the baby eagle that day, and since my light work isn't very good, I just..." When Xianxia heard this, he almost lost his breath. He asked in shock, You didn't jump off of Black Wind Cliff, did you?" "No. Your little brother went to Black Wind Cliff, but I was ashamed. In terms of willpower, I'm not as good as Brother Chen, so I didn't dare jump from there after all. In the end, I went to Little Dragon Mountain, just outside the county, and only then did I have the courage to try it. Compared to Brother Chen, I actually tied a rope to my waist." Zhang Ji became even more ashamed after he admitted this. He thought of Xianxia leaping down without any hesitation on that day, his admiration for him beyond words. Xianxia had no idea what to say. Although Little Dragon Mountain was only a small hill, it was still around 100 meters high. God might take care of you, but you shouldn't abuse that blessing. Look at him. He broke a leg, even with a rope tied to him. This proved that people's luck could be exhausted, right? Seeing Xianxia's serious expression, Zhang Ji hurriedly added on, "Brother Chen, you know what, this method really works. I gained a deep understanding of light work when I was falling. When my legs get better, my light work will definitely improve a lot." Xianxia held his breath and ignored his words, patting Zhang Ji on the shoulder and preparing to educate him. If he didn't and this kid really got himself killed one day, he would definitely feel guilty. However, Zhang Ji suddenly pointed to the corner of the wall and smiled, saying, "Brother Chen, your little brother isn't talented, and he didn't dare jump off of Black Wind Cliff. But guess what? I found 2 large racer mushrooms on the rock wall of Little Dragon Mountain. I brought one here to Brother Chen as a gift." Chen looked in the direction he was pointing towards and saw the huge racer mushroom. It was purple in the middle and could almost be used as an umbrella. Looking at Zhang Ji, who was a little embarrassed, there were mixed feelings present in his heart. At that moment, he let out the breath he was holding.